So last night we had Johnny Fisher, Dave Allen too. And I have to be honest with you, as a whole, the card was actually quite fun. It was quite a fun watch. Kieran Conway did really, really well. I thought he looked very good. George Liddard, he was in there with a completely overmatched guy. No offense to the guy, but I like knockouts, and it was entertaining. Johnny Fisher, Dave Allen, very entertaining fight for what it lasted, and yeah, as a whole, it was all right. But I want to speak about Eddie Hearn and what really is going on with Matchroom UK more so. US, he's not as bad. He's got the likes of Bam Rodriguez over in the States, Boots Ennis, who is phenomenally talented. We know that. So Matchroom US is not doing too bad. It's got competition, of course, because the US market is, you've got PPC, Top Rank, Golden Boy, etc. So, and there's this talk that Frank Warren could be dipping his toe into the US market. Let's wait and see on that one. You've got MVP, obviously Jake Paul. He's taken a lot of the female fighters that Eddie Hearn had, and obviously so in the US there's a lot of competition there, but in the UK it's primarily between Eddie Frank and now Ben Shalom. All right, and now Ben Shalom is doing a little bit better. He's not doing as many shows as he was with Sky, but obviously he's going with quality over quantity, which I don't hate. I can't hate on that, because a lot of the shows he was doing in the past, they were just subpar, very subpar. Frank Warren, who was a rival of Eddie Hearn for the longest time, I mean, I don't care what anyone says, he's number one in the UK. There's no ifs or buts. Frank Warren it's phenomenal, really, the turnaround he's had from the Box Nation days. I mean, the TNT deal, obviously, was known as BT Sport back then. I don't want to say it was a game changer, but it was the start of Frank climbing that ladder. Took a long time, though. It didn't just happen overnight. But he was able to get more established, sign the likes of Carl Frampton, Tyson Fury, etc. And obviously we see pay dividends, spot a talent like Anthony Yard, Daniel Dubois, you've got Moses Atoma. You get what I mean, right? So Frank has done great work. Eddie Hearn in the mid 2010s, I'm going to say from 2016 to 2019, they were his peak years, and he done very well. It seemed like, anyone ever see that scene out of Harry Potter where it's the first movie where Harry and Ron are sitting in the train, and the lady with the food comes and says, "What do you want?" And Harry Potter just puts his hand in his pocket and just goes, "We'll take the lot." That was like Eddie Hearn with Team GB at one stage. It just seemed like that was just Eddie Hearn and Team GB. Which one do you want, Eddie? We'll take the lot. Because it just seemed like he was just signing every GB, either if they weren't medaling in the Olympics or going to the Olympics, or they were a standout, they were just going to Matchroom. Just seemed that way. Now it's kind of which one? The majority are going to Frank, it seems. Frank or Ben Shalom. And in terms of his stable of fighters, he has a pay-per-view name or star in Joshua. For how long, we don't know. He's near the end. By his own admission, near the end. Conor Benn with Chris Eubank Jr., yeah. But after that, if it's not Chris Eubank Jr., I mean, if Conor Benn was to fight, I know he's not gonna, but say he went to 154 pounds and fought Israel Madrimov. I know he's not gonna. That's stupid matchmaking, but you get what I mean. Just say hypothetically, right? Could you do that pay-per-view? Hell no. You couldn't do it on pay-per-view. You could do a Eubank rematch on pay-per-view, but after that, what you doing on pay-per-view? You can't. And then you look at the rest of the stable, and it's like, well, there isn't any. I mean, Eddie Hearn is invested in the likes of Johnny Fisher, who's a gimmick. No offense, but he is. That was always going to end prematurely, because you look at that and you think, right, you want a 5-year plan. He ain't going 5 years unbeaten. If you're going to try and step him up and get him the pay-per-view, it's not going to happen. You look at some of the other guys in his stable and you're like, well, look, Jack Cattrall's a good boxer, but man, you can't. That's just, Derek Chisora and him fought in the same building a week apart. Look at the difference in attendance. It's night and day. And that was Otto Lane, Chisora. I don't think it's not even a big name, but Chisora, look at the difference in attendance between that and the Jack Cattrall fight. It's crazy, right? So Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing, certainly UK based. I don't really know what you do. These next gen shows that he's doing, at one stage when he was on Sky, those next gen shows were decent. You knew what you were going to get. They weren't selling it as 50-50 fights, But you saw the likes of Boazzi, Coley, Reece Bellotti lost actually on one of those shows. And you could see that he had not stars in the making necessarily, but people who could, fly the flag for Matchroom Boxing over the next few years. I don't see that with any of them now. I literally don't see it, Yafai, I'm a little bit on the fence with him. Don't know how good he's going to be. I look at some of the other shows he's coming up in the UK and some of the ones he's done, and nothing really I look at whets the appetite. This is a guy who had a stranglehold on the heavyweight division at one point. He had Alexander Usyk, he had Anthony Joshua, so he had the two. Obviously Usyk wasn't the champion at the time, but he had the two big guys. Usyk would go on to be the main guy. I'm sure he still kick himself for letting that slip. But he had Anthony Joshua, he had Dylan White, he had Derek Chisora, he had Joseph Parker. He had loads of the heavyweight guys who now are either independent, Alexander Usyk, AJ's coming to the end, or they're all with Frank Warren. Frank Warren invested so much in the heavyweight division, be it at, domestic level, with, the likes of David Alaye, be it with the future stars, like a Moses Atelma, and the future stars that he knew would be stars, and Daniel Dubois, who's now fighting for Undisputed. So Frank Warren has built that stable from the ground up, and he's built it to last. Whereas it just seems like Eddie Hearn lately, over the last couple of years, just want that money in now. There you go. But the problem with that is, once you make that payday, where's the next one going to come from? Daniel Dubois has been making Frank Warren money for a while now, and he'll probably, if he beats Alexander Usyk, good lord, Frank Warren, the smile is already, so big, it's looking like a half moon. It's going to be a full moon if Daniel Dubois manages to beat Alexander Usyk. You get what I mean? He has plans, Frank Warren. He has contingency plans, and he has potential stars for the future. I think he does in Atelma. Again, with Eddie Hearn, I don't see any of them. Once AJ goes, Conor Benn, I don't think so. Long term. And then who do you have? In the US, you've got Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who is tremendously talented. I think he'll be a phenomenal fighter for years to come. But he doesn't really put butts in seats. Boots Ennis, yes, potentially got something there, but we need to wait and see. I don't think the Matchroom link up is necessarily, it hasn't hit the ground running. We can definitely say that, but I'm hoping that it's growing pains. And then who do you have? You have Andy Cruz. I like Andy Cruz. He's a good fighter, but none of these guys are really putting, butts in seats. And is that not what part of the job is? As a promoter, as a business, put butts in seats. So this is not me saying Matchroom is struggling or anything like that. I think in the UK scene, it shows that Eddie Hearn's maybe lost touch. Maybe lost hunger is the better word, as opposed to lost touch, because I get with Eddie Hearn lately, he just doesn't seem to have that same fire, that tenacity that he had a couple of years ago. Whereas Frank Warren, that fire is never dimmed. It's the difference between the two. So I do wonder what's going on with Matchroom and what's going to go on moving forward, because, as I said, lately it's been strange. It's been very strange, and I don't see anybody who can fly that Matchroom flag moving forward for the future. Certainly in the UK. Certainly not in the UK. So let me know your thoughts on everything I spoke about here in the comment section below. As always, people, I hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Peace.